Happy Tuesday, everybody. And if you are looking for a distraction from all the election coverage, we have you covered here tonight as me and Jeffrey Raymond are going to be talking about the Detroit Lions and that beautiful victory in Lambeau against the Packers. Jeffrey, great to have you back
Yes.
after your weekend away. I hope you and Hillary had a great time celebrating not only Hillary's birthday, but also Grandma's.
Yeah, Grandma Hacker, 94 years old, having a great birthday surrounded by loved ones. It was a good time. It was a good time.
Well, we certainly missed you here on the Lions grid, and I tried to carry on as best as I could without you. I got a little ballsy with my lock of the week, and it did not turn out well. So we'll cover that when we grind the grid. But Jeffrey, I think the best place to start is just to jump in here and start talking about this Lions victory. So I'll go ahead here. We'll get the highlights rolling. And without further ado, Jeffrey, we can talk about this Lions victory.
Yeah, absolutely dominant. Um, the only reason we didn't score more was because I think the weather held back the
Mhm.
machine just because of how crappy it was. I mean, it was raining sideways at one point. It was coming down pretty much the entire game, but we went in there and kind of danced on their grave, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I know. Despite the weather, I know the offense wasn't necessarily, we didn't put up another, 40 burger or something like that, like we had been. I know over the last four games, we've been averaging 43 points. But Jared Goff, who has traditionally, like one of the knocks against him has been that he struggles in outdoor environments in the weather. He had a very efficient game. Again, he didn't like wow with his yardage or touchdown numbers, but it was a long time before he had an incomplete pass in this game, Jeffrey. I know at
Yeah,
one time he was like 11 or 12 in a 11 of 12, 11, 11 and 12 of 12 at some point before he
Yep,
finally.
he was loading for 12 at one point, and yeah, he's still kind of continuing his very good, possibly MVP candidate type of season going on. And like I said, I don't think it was in the game plan really for him to throw that much. I think they got what they needed. Out of everything else. I mean, especially because due to the weather. I mean, and he's always
Mhm.
had, like you said, that kind of knock against him as far as like he can't play outside outside of a dome. But he wore gloves. He wore gloves
He
for the
did,
game
yep.
today or on Sunday. So definitely something helped. We look way better than we looked in our first outdoor game last year against the Ravens. Right, I remember that was a pretty blistery cold day. I mean, it wasn't raining or anything, but like we looked bad, and it was just like it was crazy. But this was absolutely different. We took care of business.
Yeah, it was. I think the only thing that was a little bit concerning as we see Josh Jacobs there break a pretty big run up the middle. One of the things that I was talking about before the game on Sunday, Jeffrey, was obviously we're missing Aiden Hutchinson, who's a big part of the defensive front, but we were also seeing a lot of those rotational pieces in this game. We had a lot of those guys out, so we weren't able to keep as fresh of bodies in this game. And knowing that the weather was going to be bad, that both teams were probably going to be leaning on their running games a little bit more. I think this Lions rush defense, which was the fifth best heading into this game, and has really looked great since that Carolina game that we don't speak of. Uh, they did suffer, I think, a little bit from just not having the same depth available in that rotation that they usually have. And you were able to see this Packers offense. They look good running the ball with Josh Jacobs. So, I mean, that's not necessarily a surprise. They've looked good all season with him running the ball. But a little bit surprising that they were able to find so much success against the Lions here, because again, traditionally they're pretty stout against the run.
Yeah, I think Josh Jacobs, great running back. I think he's been set free from the circus show that is the
Mhm.
Raiders organization, so and into an actual NFL offense there. But yeah, I think their run game has been good, and he's been solid this entire year. But on the passing game side, though, to me it seemed pretty clear that Jordan Love was still hurting out there.
Yeah, he was definitely struggling with that groin injury. And in that highlight, Jeffrey, speaking of the passing game, we did have the Brian Brantz ejection in the second quarter. Want to get your thoughts on that one? I will say, first of all, there is no targeting in the NFL. That is not a penalty. That being said, I am 100% okay with trying to get those types of hits out of the league and trying to make it safe. But like you have to do that across the board. Like this is the first time I've ever seen the NFL, the team in New York, call in and say someone needs to be ejected from a game for one of those hits. And
Yeah.
that it just it and especially this is a first place match between two rivals. Like this is a huge game and you're in New York and you're making that call, and that's not a call that you traditionally make across the league. That's the part I'm okay with your logic, but like apply it consistently is what I asked for. So what are your thoughts there, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I think the big thing you say there is consistency. The NFL is absolutely not consistent when it comes to calling certain plays as far as penalties, assessing punishments for things that athletes do, right? The way they fine people, that nothing they do speaks to consistency, and it's just they were high on their own supply, I think, today, because across the league there were several calls coming from New York. They threw Puka Nakua out. That may have been warranted. I kind of saw the end of that, but it was in retaliation. They I feel like it's just what's the point of having like this kind of this two referee system? Like you got the people in the game, then you got the people in New York. And in one instance, the guys in the game, I don't think it was our game, but they were like in the middle of a call, but then they got the call from New York, so they were confused. It's like what are you doing? And in this particular case with like the kind of going for the head, and I do agree, it absolutely should be, no question about it, should be based on the current rules and unnecessary roughness. I mean, he had time to let up. I think I think he let the moment kind of get the best of him. I get it, right? You're playing a rival. You're playing on someone who has danced on us all for the past like 70 years. So like, we're hot and excited, but that's definitely unnecessary roughness. But like we had a guy last week try to like break Justin Herbert's ankle, and he didn't get flagged or called from the NFL. So it's like, well, what are y'all doing?
Yeah, I mean it's just Lions fans I think have a history of, and it used to be the argument was, well, if you get better, like you won't have the NFL won't be your enemy, right? Good teams get calls, right? And at this point, we've pretty much arrived, right? We are one of the best teams in the entire NFL and arguably the best team in the NFC. So at this point in time, if we're still getting these calls that are going against us from the league, and you don't have that, I think the thing that allows that to happen is the lack of consistency, is what allows that conversation to continue to exist. So certainly, again, I'm all for trying to keep players safe, and if they want to introduce a targeting penalty or the targeting call to the pro game, that's fine. But like, do it for the entire league, not just the Lions as they're playing the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau. Just not
yeah,
good.
no, and they get a lot of flack for favoring like certain teams, like whether or not it's us seeing this through the lens or it's actually happening. But I feel like it happens enough to where there's like a come on, like with the Chiefs, they've had one of their offensive linemen essentially false start the entire season so far, and they don't call it on them. There's always I feel like there's always a penalty when the Chiefs are driving down the field or something needs to happen for the Chiefs. There's always something there. Like I think, regardless of if it's like, script writers or not, right. I think it speaks to what you keep saying is just like, you need to have that consistency across the board. I mean, you're $1 billion league here. Come on now.
And Detroit Fan Man, welcome to the show. Saying, hey guys, explaining Run D, can we say that they just ran over our weak edges as both Thomas and Muhammad were targeted and fell short? And now with Pascal returning and Z Smithy, is it already fixed? I think that's definitely an interesting question. I definitely think they did. Josh Jacobs was able to find success on the edges, but he was finding some holes in the middle as well. So I do think that having Josh Pascal back and definitely bringing in Zadarius Smith, that we'll talk about the trades that have happened here before the deadline, Jeffrey, shortly. But I definitely like that addition, and I think it should help solidify that defensive front And again, I think the injuries that we have for those sort of role players, we should be seeing them come back in. They're not like long-term injuries. So we should be seeing everybody sort of get back, and then we'll have that full rotation and complement again, of course, minus some of the bigger pieces that we already know are gone for the season. So it's definitely not something that I think we need to be overly worried about, Jeffrey, but what are your thoughts there about if Zadarius Smith not only can help with the pass rush, but potentially shore up the run defense as well?
Yeah, I think him just being there elevates the floor of the pass rush and just the line play in general. I do love me some Z Smith. Welcome back to the NFC North. This is his what is this his third team or second team? I think it's his third time in the NFC North. Is that am I
think
off
so?
base
Yeah,
on
he
that?
was with the Vikings, the Packers, and now the Lions. So
Welcome
third
back
time's the
again
charm.
and again. Yeah, right. But yeah, he elevates the floor of it. He's got 6 sacks this season already. He getting to the quarterback has been one of our issues. Our biggest issue, we absolutely took care of that. That's our secondary. Like, even while our pass rush is not getting to us, compared to last year, our secondary is just night and day. But as far as kind of Z Smith kind of coming here, I think it's just going to overall be good. We have somebody that can, because we generate a lot of pressures, but a lot of those pressures don't become sacks. And even that was the case when Aiden Hutchinson was there. They were throwing 2 dudes at him at any given time, mauling him. Speaking of not getting flags, lots of holding on that guy just to try to stop that man. But I think anything will help because, like Detroit Fan Man said, like we went up against supposedly one of the better teams in the NFC, and they were able to run on us. Despite it being a rarity for us, did Josh Jacobs crack 100 yards of rushing? Because I think going into the game, we were at something of 600 plus days of not allowing a 100-yard rusher from I think what I was reading.
He hit 95 himself.
Ooh, okay, so
as a team, they crossed the century mark.
Okay,
but as an individual, held him to 9. Yeah.
But yeah, I think Zadarius Smith only makes us better. Only wish we could pair him with the Hutch, but maybe if we get to the Super Bowl, I don't know. Duct tape that leg together and get out. Hutch would do it, man. He's a crazy man.
Yeah, and do 7777 commenting here. I think Lions were moving the ball there at the end of the game, Jeffrey, and I think they did just run out the clock just out of spite to not give that Packers offense any chance to put up any more points. And also agreeing that the addition of Zadarius Smith being huge for the Lions. So it's going to be exciting to see. I think the Detroit Lions were definitely one of the teams here at the trade deadline that improved with the moves they made. And let's take a look here, Jeffrey. Again, this is another week, if we take a look here at the box score, where you wouldn't necessarily think the Lions were on the winning end of this game if you just looked at some of these stats. But they're just efficient, right? The defense has that bend, not break mentality. We don't give up a lot of points. We force turnovers. And then the offense, when they have opportunities, they score points. And they don't put up a lot of. There's not a lot of stat Padfording going on with the Lions anymore at this point.
I think we would have tried to score a little bit more if Jordan Love didn't throw that horrid pick six before the end of the half. I think really that changed the overall shape of the game because now you've got us points and we're not even having to drive down the field. Right. So we're in business, and you're right. We're one of the more efficient teams in the league, and we make good on the opportunities that we get.
Absolutely. And then flipping over here again, you can see 4th down in this game, Jeffrey. We're very efficient. We were 2 for 2 in this game. So there's a little bit of Dan Gamble on display, but thankfully in this one, nothing to regret, but Jeffrey, I know we've had this conversation before about Dan Gamble and whether, we want to see him. I think Tom Brady, even during the broadcast, was saying this is the type of play during the playoffs where you want to see him exercise some caution or something like that. But, it's part of the Lions' DNA, right? It's part of this culture they've built, this idea. I think it's this belief in themselves that regardless of what they're doing, whether they're going for it, that either the offense is going to succeed or the defense is going to be able to step up and stop it if it does go the wrong way. So I think he just has absolute belief in this team. So he is not afraid to put the ball in the players' hands and tell them to go get it. Because, like I've said, one of the big things with this Lions team, the big differences between them and the previous eras of the Lions is the ability to capitalize on opportunities. And they just continue to do it, man.
Yeah. I believe both those fourth downs were touchdowns. At the end of it, they're just so good at situational football. It's just something we've not seen ever, right? We're typically, when I was growing up watching the Lions, we were typically the worst coach teams in the league, the worst kind of output, finding ways to like just lose and just the stupidest absolute ways, just like, not good at situational football, but this is a market difference. And I think, it goes as a testament to the culture that Dan Campbell brings to the entire organization. I mean, yes, he's going off of analytics to be aggressive, but at some point you also had to be like, I know my dude can go out there and get 3-4 yards on any given time. Or in this case, let's throw some tutties on some fourth downs.
Yeah, the touchdown pass to Amon-Ra was pretty filthy. And then, of course, he hit the handstand there. But good stuff, man.
I love that. When did Matt Ryan say that? I love that quote.
For 3 more quarters. Yeah, it is. They are a pretty brutal team, and it's going to be interesting to see how this continues to go on, because we are, our next couple of games are against some of those AFC South teams, and outside of the Texans who lost to the Jets, who we'll talk about here shortly. The AFC South is kind of having a down year, so a little bit of an opportunity for us here. I don't want to say to coast, because these are very important games, especially as we try to establish ourselves for that number 1 seed in the NFC. I think there's a great opportunity to have the path to the Super Bowl go through Detroit, which, being at Ford Field, it was for the Titans, right? Like, the Titans are horrible this season. That atmosphere was electric, so I can only imagine what it'll be like, or what it's like in the actual playoffs, to bring teams in here. So if we can secure home field for the Lions and sort of stack some wins here, we're going to be looking in really good shape. The Lions definitely are in control of their own fate right now, and it feels pretty good, Jeffrey.
It does. At work, I teach at a university, and I have some Packers. I have a bunch of NFL team fandoms amongst the student body. And I've had several Packers students come up to me and just kind of like chat about it and being like, man, yeah, you guys are good. And it's just like, yes, that's right. That's right.
The respect has been earned, yes, baby. All right, Jeffrey. Well, it is time, as always, to take a look at the rest of the NFL as we go ahead and grind the grid here. So, of course, Week 9, Jeffrey, got kicked off on Thursday Night Football. As mentioned, the Texans going down to the Jets, 13-21, the final score there. I think the bad thing for the Jets is even when they win, it doesn't feel good. Like, they got the win, but you're not like excited about it. It's just like, they beat them.
We did get probably the catch of the decade about 10 years after Odell had that catch by
Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, by Garrett Wilson, that just like behind the back, one-handed, got the shin in bounds. Whew, man.
There was a lot of athleticism on display this weekend. I'm sure when we get to the Eagles, we can bring up that backwards hurdle that Saquon busted out. But it's just some of the stuff that the players are doing nowadays in the NFL is it's crazy. You don't see plays like that anywhere else other than in the NFL, and it is just it's great. I mean, it's a great time to be a fan of the NFL. Maybe we're biased, we're Lions fans, but hey, there's exciting things happening everywhere.
Happy trails and rainbows for us because we're finally good.
2 fan bases that probably aren't sharing our optimism, Jeffrey. The New Orleans Saints, the Carolina Panthers, an NFC South showdown. Unfortunately for Dennis Allen, this 22-23 loss was his last as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. He now joins Robert Saleh in the S tier of our hot butts watch as the only 2 coaches who have been let go so far. The Saints, man, they started off with such promise. They looked good through the first 2 games, but it's why the NFL is a marathon and not a sprint. And since winning those 2 games, Jeffrey, it has not looked good for the Saints.
They're in rough shape. I mean, they had, after the loss, had players out there like on Twitter and just to the media being like, "We lost to the Panthers. I want to apologize to the city of New Orleans." Like, I'm like, dang, losing to the Panthers, that's what it does to a guy. But they're in rough shape in general. Their locker room has bad vibes all around. It seems like Dennis Allen lost the locker room. It seems like there is an internal war going on between players and Derek Carr.
Yep.
with people tweeting about it, especially Michael Thomas kind of going off, telling him that basically, well, he literally said he just called him ass. He literally called him ass on his granny. So he's bringing his grandma into this. So he's serious, and he's been, he's always kind of been a guy who's going to call things out, whether it's needed or not. But there's been a lot of smoke going on over there, and I don't think this is the end of their problems. Their cap space looks absolutely terrible. I mean, they are they've got so much cap hit, and they've restructured so many contracts that like they essentially are keeping punting all of this down the line. At some point, you got to pay, and they're kind of in purgatory all the time. They never truly took the team down for a rebuild. Kind of after the Sean Payton era, they have got a bunch of they've got talent on their roster, but it's aging talent. There's no room in their cap space to like supplement any of that. And at some point, they're going to have to eat some dead money for a couple of years. And you might as well do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, they were also sellers here during the trade deadline, trading Marshawn Lattimore to the Washington Commanders. So, thanks for helping out them. Appreciate that, helping them shore up their defense. That was awful kind to them. And then, on the other side of things, Carolina's offensive line, when it comes to running the football, is surprisingly good for a team that is as bad as they are. I don't think they have it's kind of, it doesn't make sense, right? They're that good at running the football. They've been doing it the last couple of weeks. I mean, Chuba Hubbard is just like running teams over. It's not even Jonathan Brooks yet. So it's crazy. But the Panthers were also sellers here at the trade deadline. They traded Jonathan Mingo to Dallas. And of course, they also traded Deontay Johnson to Baltimore. So they unloaded wide receivers, man.
That Dallas trade made me laugh so hard, man.
That was definitely the trade they needed to solidify things down there. And
Jonathan Mingo he got benched because he sucked so bad in Carolina. So come on now, they traded a 4th round pick for him, man.
I'm surprised they didn't go after Thielen. I mean, if you were going to grab anybody from
I would have rather taken him, but I don't know, man. Jerry, his brain is addled.
He's doing his own thing, that's for sure. And
on the other side, though, with the Panthers, Bryce Young got another start. He looked decent. I mean, not, obviously not, like he's not like like taking off and like being like the Patrick Mahomes or anything, but he had a pretty decent game as far as being positive and efficient, right? And ultimately getting the victory out of them. He made a couple good throws and one deep strike, which looked pretty good. But yeah, I mean, he seems like he's got a lot more confidence, at least from the beginning of the season.
Yeah, definitely seems to be in a better headspace at this point, and played well here against the Saints. Then we had an NFC East matchup, Jeffrey. We had the Commanders going on the road to take on the Giants, and the Commanders pull down another win, going to 27-22 and improving to, I think they're 7-2 on the season. Let me just double check that real quick. 7-2. Yep, 7-2, and in first place in the NFC East, with the Eagles nipping at their toes at 6-2. So, on a 3-game winning streak, Jaden Daniels continues to look good. Now they're bringing in a cornerback in Marcus Lattimore to help solidify their defense. Commanders could be a team, Jeffrey, that the Lions could see in the postseason.
Yeah, that would be, it's just our luck though that when we have our renaissance for the first time in like 100 years, the other historical bad teams are having their renaissance. But yeah, they're becoming a threat. Jaden Daniels is playing fantastic. They shoring up with Marshawn Lattimore is going to only help them, as I think their defense is their weak point as far as all their squads go. On the other side, the Giants, they just can't, like, scoring is a problem for them. Danny Dimes, they're paying him like an absolute superstar. Like at some point, like he's supposed to be living up to the bill, and he's clearly not. I'm not saying he's bad or anything, but like, what are you doing, New York? You let Saquon walk, and you're giving Danny Dimes all this money, but like, what else is out there here?
Yeah, it's definitely seems like Brian Dabble. Of course, we'll see him again on our hot butts list here, but he survived last season, thanks in part to good old Tony Cutlets coming in there and playing for Danny Dimes. But I don't think there's going to be any sort of magic this season that's going to keep him around. I think we might be looking at the end of the Brian Dabble era with the Giants. All right, Jeffrey. Then in an AFC East matchup, why don't you talk to us about Bills Dolphins?
Yeah, so another good win out here by Buffalo. They won 30-27, hitting a Tyler Bass 40-yard field goal at the end of the game to win it for them. Miami just can't get right here. Even with Tua back, it's just not working out for them. And with them being 2-6, and with Buffalo dominating this division, really, I mean, 7-2 when the next closest is the Jets at 3-6. So I feel like with Miami, you got to start thinking about almost like, what about protecting Tua here? Maybe shut this thing down here in week 9. Get one of these top 5 picks, although there's a lot of crappy teams out here. Try to, kind of manage for the future here, because clearly it's not working.
Yes, it does seem like at least, this season we're quickly approaching that stage where you just got to kind of write it off and start preparing for the off season. So, it'll be interesting to see how they move forward. They were definitely a team with a lot of expectations heading into the season. And so, it's one thing like when you're Carolina and you came into the season and you didn't really expect to do much. Totally different when you were expecting to be competing for a spot in the playoffs, and now it's kind of looking like your season is already done halfway through. So it's a tough spot to be in. So it'll be interesting to see what the Dolphins do. They weren't sellers or buyers here at the trade deadline, so it's really unclear, exactly what their strategy is going to be. So,
as far as I'm just kind of, I had the AFC East standings up, and it showed points for and points away. Buffalo's points for is 260 so far this season. The next closest in their division is 271 for the Jets. Then it drops down to New England, 141, with Miami being in last place for points for at 124. Like, just a huge drop even to second place, but Miami kind of being down there for being supposedly a offensive kind of like, juggernaut, right? Obviously they've had a bunch of issues too, and not being there and all this kind of things, but yeah, not good.
Yep. And now they're definitely at a point where they have zero room for error. So now you have the Jets, you have the Dolphins, both with zero room for error. Makes their matchups going to be pretty spicy for determining if either of these teams, either of these bottom dwellers, can challenge for a spot in the AFC wild card.
Speaking of bottom dwellers, we're going to have another international game of this coming week out in Germany, and we're sending our best, man. We've got the Giants and the Panthers going out there. Covered both those teams. I forgot to mention that, but like, man, what a
sending some quality football overseas.
Have fun, Germany.
only the best for our friends over in Germany. All right, Jeffrey. This was a AFC matchup between the Chargers and the Browns. Not a divisional one, but they're both in the same conference. So, talk to me about this Chargers Browns game, Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jameis Winston, he came back to where he usually typically is with the multi interceptions, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. Nick Chubb, he had 15 carries but only 39 yards. He overall has not looked like he is fully back from the injury, and rightfully so after such a horrific injury. But
Yeah.
you got to work him in, and it's not looking good for him as far as that goes. But on the other side, the Chargers keep rolling. Justin Herbert's quietly having a really good year. I think a lot was made about him being just an elite talent, especially over the few years, and him not living up to the bill. But I think, I think the coaching scenery really has helped this entire team. I mean, you got the same pieces that Brandon Staley had, especially on defense too. It's not even just offense, on defense, and they're playing at a way better level, a way higher level than they were last year. So I think as far as the Chargers, I think they're definitely a team to watch here in the AFC West. Right? Maybe they could be finally a team that'll take down these Chiefs. But
someone's got to do it.
Yeah, right. Baker almost did it, man. But Todd Bowles didn't have the onions to go for 2. That was the moment. They should have done it.
I have long been a proponent that we need to move to the college rules for overtime in the NFL. I hate that games can be. I appreciate the change they made, where if they don't, at least you can't go and kick a field goal anymore and just win the game. You have to score a touchdown. But I definitely think both offenses, especially when it's the offense that is the unit that just drove down the field and scored for Tampa Bay to send them to overtime.
Yeah, and it puts too much emphasis on who wins the coin toss, which I'd rather leave it up to players than leave it up to luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be luck involved regardless. But I feel the coin flip, like when you put 2 teams in overtime, right? I mean, the spectacle of the thing, one, is good because, like, sports overtime, it's like the ultimate kind of like, it's a good hype moment, and then and then to see like the best unit on the field, like for example with the Kansas City and Buffalo in that playoff tilt that they had, and Josh Allen never got to see the field in the whole thing. Like you're just kind of you're hiding the best parts about your sport, not doing that. And I do like the college ones. I think many people would disagree as well, but I do like the college ones. But I would like to have every team be guaranteed 1 possession.
Yeah. And hello, Artur. Great to have you here. Glad that YouTube finally connected the dots and put us together. And yeah, go Lions.
Yeah,
thank you for being here and supporting us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
All right, Jeffrey. Moving on here, why don't you tell us a little bit about this obviously not a very exciting game. 2 teams that are bottom dwellers. I'm surprised we didn't send this game over to Germany, Jeffrey.
Well, they at least could get to see a young emerging talent in Drake May. He had a play at the end of the game where he was running around for a full 11-something seconds before he threw a touchdown pass. And surprisingly, actually, in the kind of the advanced analytics era, only 2 quarterbacks have ever had more than 10 seconds to throw and completed a pass for that. And we got 2 of those within this season, with Jaden Daniels running around for like 12 seconds getting that Hail Mary, and then now Drake May running around for about 11 seconds getting that touchdown pass. But at least that's the only bright spot you can kind of see with the Patriots. They're so talent poor that they're not going to be able to hang with other teams. Fortunately, in this case, where they were with playing against Tennessee, who's also in a similar boat, who are also sellers pretty much for this kind of the trade cycle going through. But Tennessee ultimately won because I think they had just a bit more talent on their team, 20-17. Mason Rudolph had another game. I think Will Levis is hoping to play. At least that's what Brian Callahan was saying next week. So, but it'll be interesting to see if Will Levis last very long out there, given kind of how poor he had looked, and if he kind of continues all that turnover machine nonsense. But yeah, just a couple of bottom dwelling teams here duking it out. The double wounded animal game.
Yeah, I'm surprised that no one was able during this trade deadline to go in there and get L'Jarius Sneed, or who is the? I'm trying to think of their. Is it Isaiah Simmons? Their big defensive tackle, who is just a force. There, he is. I saw he made a play in the game at Ford Field where he just blew up the play all by himself. I'm pretty sure it's Isaiah.
I do. It is interesting seeing some of these linemen, like really good offensive linemen, just like trapped in all these terrible teams, and they'll stick it out and they'll just be like one of the best in their position, but they'll play for the Titans or they'll play for the Saints or whatnot. Free those boys, free those big men, bring them over to these contenders.
Yeah, it's I know Zadarius Smith, he said that he hit the lottery pretty much going from the situation in Cleveland to now being in Detroit. So, it's at the one hand, I like to see players have like loyalty and like be like committed to their teams and stuff like that. But at the same time, like you do only have so many years of a window of where you're going to be at like your peak and things like that. And if your team and your organization is just not getting things going and not like putting you in a position where you have like an opportunity to go out and succeed, it is rough. I think a lot of players have certainly spent the best years of their career trying to get things figured out, and it just doesn't always work out, despite how talented some of these guys are.
Yeah, and it's one thing to you're doing your best and you lose, and your front office is doing all the right things, kind of thing, but it just doesn't work out. But then, like, if you're a part of just like a clown show, it's like,
well, it's funny you should mention.
I should mention
Jeffrey.
Oh my God.
Cowboys here, and it was Jeffrey Simmons. I should have remembered that is Jeffrey Simmons is the defensive tackle for the Titans. Who I know the Ravens in particular were interested in him, but he's a beast. But clown shows, Jeffrey.
Yes.
Cowboys.
Yeah. Dak Prescott is going to be out for multiple weeks. I think that's the biggest thing to come out of this game, outside of it just being an absolute dumpster fire for Dallas. They don't look good. Ezekiel Elliott was a healthy scratch this game due to disciplinary reasons. Like, you brought in the prodigal Ewok, and he's there's just something going on in that locker room.
Allegedly, he's been late to practice. He was late to a meeting on Friday. He didn't want to go to Atlanta. They didn't want him to come to Atlanta.
It's nuts, and and they don't have a normal front office situation because they have Jerry Jones. He is the Cowboys, and he essentially made he has absolutely hands-on decisions for all these things, right? He traded the 4th for Jonathan Mingo. He still thinks Dallas has a chance this year, even with him at the same time earlier this day saying that we're putting Dak on IR most likely.
And Cooper Rush, we trust, man.
Yeah, I think he's just old and addled at this point, man. Because the Cowboys aren't like the premier team in the league. Like, everybody gets the America's team shoved down their throat, but when was the last time that they were doing their thing? In the 90s? It's been, you know what I mean?
It's been a while. They're certainly
I think
resting on those laurels.
I think honestly he's surrounded by yes men, and no one is there to be like, hey, we should probably not do some of these things just based on ego and based on your gut, because you've done this for 80 billion years. You're an old man. It don't make any sense, man. And especially with the all-in nature of their whole off season, and then doing what they did to bring in basically nothing. and then just making these just head scratching decisions and just getting clowned on. It's doesn't make me want to take them seriously.
Yeah, and certainly there was. I mean, there was an opportunity. I mean, you had Micah Pearsons, you had Dexter Lawrence. You know, you could have potentially here at the trade deadline made some moves to maybe get some capital to improve in the offseason. Because certainly, you know, again, as you mentioned with Dak going on IR, certainly doesn't seem like this season is going to be the one. You know, there are definitely some personalities there that maybe you could have looked to move. Uh, you know, as pointed out there, Diggs, the Stephon Diggs' brother. What I can't remember his first name, but I know he has definitely been. He has a feud going on right now with one of the beat writers down there in Dallas, and so just like you had this opportunity to maybe either get some draft capital to help improve the team, or maybe move on from some pieces that are being thorns in the side, and they just didn't do it. And on the other side, Falcons took care of business. They were playing a team that's in disarray, and you know, they are steadily. I think they are in really great shape here now.
They are 6-3, and with Tampa Bay losing last night, dropping into 4-5, so they are in the driver's seat of that division. And Tampa Bay will get
down
to them.
Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Yeah,
without them, and Baker Mayfield's doing everything he can, man. But at some point, I think Atlanta's roster just looks overall better because Tampa Bay's got all their stars out.
And so the Falcons could be a team that we could be seeing here in the postseason as well, Jeffrey. And Luke JT, welcome to the show. Appreciate you enjoying the title of here. You know, Lions, they don't concern themselves with the opinions of sheep. And we are, I think that's the great thing about this Lions team. They just keep up going out there, and they have belief and faith in themselves, and they just are, they're just winning. And it feels good. It feels good. Cowboys, they are not. They do not have that same belief. Well, they have the belief, but they just can't back it up. Jeffrey, Las Vegas and Cincinnati. Why don't you talk to us about this AFC matchup?
Yeah, 41-24. The Bengals stomp on another, I would say, clown show organization. Unfortunately, with the Raiders, love the fan base, love the unis, but it's not looking good. It looks like I feel like Antonio Pierce. I was listening to Jason Palmer, who covered the Raiders a bit this year on a radio show, and he was talking about how Antonio Pierce is doing a lot of learning on the fly, and sometimes he's letting his like inner player come out when he needs to be a coach. And I just, I think overall, there are some things going on. They had to bench Gardner Minshew again. He only threw for 124 yards. On the other side, Joe Burrow's doing everything he possibly can to get this team back into contention here. Right, he threw 5 touchdowns, 251 yards. Lots of people were catching touchdowns. Mike Gesicki came alive with 2 tutties, and they went out and got themselves a running back as well today in Khalil Herbert from Chicago. So they're trying, and it clearly, they were buyers here, and that makes me indicate that they still believe that they can come back here in this division.
Yeah, I think the thing is surprising for me, the offensive coordinator was let go by the Las Vegas Raiders, so I certainly think there is some writing on the wall there for Antonio Pierce. There was a lot of debate whether or not during the offseason whether they were going to bring him, take off the interim head coach title and bring him in full time, and he was certainly a guy that at the time I felt could be a sort of Dan Campbell-esque, former player, a guy that the players at the time seemed to be really responding to. But it's another one of those situations where you kind of wonder, has he lost the locker room there? I think once you've lost the locker room, it's kind of hard to, unless you change the players in the locker room, it's hard to, it's really hard to kind of get that back. So, another win here for the Bengals, and they certainly, they are another team, as we've talked about, Jeffrey, that does not have any room. Well, they have, I guess, a little bit of wiggle room at 4-5. They don't have that dreaded 6th loss already on the season, but certainly trying to keep pace with both the Steelers and the Ravens there in the AFC North.
Being only 2 games back from second place in that division, and Pittsburgh and Baltimore having to play each other yet, I mean, they're certainly not out of it. I don't think they have anything to worry about with Cleveland down there at 2-7. So it's very much in play. And depending on how strong the rest of the wild card pool ends up shaping out at the end of the year, they could very much be kind of on that bubble.
Could be in it to win it. We'll have to see. And we're only at week 9, so we do have another 9 weeks of NFL action here to get everything figured out. So certainly plenty of time, and it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. And then Atur, thank you for the tip there. We'll take that into consideration as we are always looking to improve upon the show. So appreciate that tip there about the design layout.
Yeah, thanks.
And Jeffrey, here is where I got a little excited while you were gone. I may have taken the Broncos as my lock of the week.
Ooh, man.
Thinking that, I knew the Ravens were going to be upset that they lost to the Browns. And I knew they were going to come out and have a good first half. I was hoping with Denver's defense, they could keep it close in the first half and then make that second half run. It didn't happen. It did not occur. 41-10, the final score there. And not good. And Jeffrey, Baltimore also being a buyer here at the trade deadline. Of course, we already talked about how they brought in Deonta Johnson from Baltimore. And of course, they also bringing in here Tre'Davious White is their newest acquisition from the Rams. So helping to shore up that secondary as well.
Because their secondary is one of their big weaknesses, I'd say.
Yep.
And
surprisingly,
I did say ooh, and I kind of laughed at your pick, but with the way Bo Nix has been playing and the way the Broncos defense has been playing, I figured it might be a recipe for a little bit of an upsetty spaghetti, but
I thought if they could just keep it close,
keep it close, anything could happen. But
they did not keep it close.
It didn't. But overall, you have to be encouraged by Bo Nix's development. Overall here, they only scored 10 points, but he's looking good running this team and in Sean Payton's offense. So I think they could have something cooking there.
Definitely a team to keep your eye on for that AFC playoff race. And then Jeffrey, I think we may be seeing a case of history repeating itself here. You had the Bears going to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Cardinals get the win 29-9 over the Bears. And once again, we're starting to hear rumbles about Matt Eberflus and his future with this Bears organization and his ability to develop Caleb Williams. That Bears offensive line is not good, to say the least. It is a big problem. They have a bunch of talented skill position players around Caleb Williams, but if he doesn't have time to throw the ball, doesn't matter.
I saw a play in this game where it was like a 4-step drop back, and the offensive line was up and blocking, but there were 4 defensive linemen past them already getting to Caleb Williams. They let 4 dudes through. It's not good, and I think the Bears are making kind of the same mistake as you kind of say with history repeating himself. They get the quarterback that they potentially want here, but then they pair him with a coach that's probably going to be gone in a year.
Yep.
A coach who just cleaned house.
Mitch Trubisky, Justin Fields, now Caleb Williams again, and not only a head coach, but your GM too, because it's looking like he'll be gone as well.
Yeah,
we've seen this movie before, and it hasn't worked out.
I feel like the forward pass for them is cursed, man. They cannot get a quarterback that can be at least stable. He showed flashes this year, but you can also easily break a talent coming out, especially a rookie talent, right? We've seen many cases of poorly run organizations ruining some potential bright spots and young bright stars. But at the very least, when we get to our Kings of the North section, I'm getting less and less worried about a certain team.
There's a certain Bears. Yeah, we were all at one point above 500. Now we are all at 500 or better, and the Bears are the team that keeps changing what that has to be. So, hopefully, I definitely would have felt much worse, or would have felt a lot more anxiety about it if we were playing against 3 teams that were over 500. But the Bears certainly falling apart here. And on the other side, the Cardinals improved to 5-4. They're currently in first place now in the NFC West, but that NFC West is anybody's division, Jeffrey. That is just wide open at this point. I know, again, 5-4 for the Cardinals, 4-4 for the Rams, 4-4 for the Niners, and then 4-5 for Seattle. So all of those teams right there.
Yeah, and Arizona kind of had a slow start, like an up and down start, I'd say, to the season. But I think they kind of are starting to pull things together. And you're right, that division is spicy.
Yeah, both the Cardinals and the Rams on 3-game winning streaks. So both of those teams right now surging a little bit, trying to take the reins there in the NFC West. All right, Jeffrey. Speaking of the NFC West, right there, the
Matt
Rams.
Stafford, one of the GOATs. I think he's still making a case for a Hall of Fame bid here because he is slinging it. Seeing him in Detroit all these years, I feel like, despite all the misery, I feel like we were seeing one of the better throwers of the football that we've seen overall. Like this man knows how to play some quarterback, and I think he was definitely forged in the fires of our misery with how bad our offenses were, how much he's had to pick himself off the floor of Ford Field just because so he knows what to do in most every situation. He's seen almost every situation, and he keeps that team competitive. I think he's a great match for Sean McVay. I think the overall this whole trade with Goff and with Stafford, I think it might be up there on like one of the best like win-win for like everyone involved.
Most certainly, yeah. Pairing Matt Stafford with Sean McVay and then pairing Jared Goff with Ben Johnson, it was the best scenario for both of those quarterbacks. Yeah. So it's just been.
And we do have that connective tissue with them because Brad Holmes was a part of the Rams and a part of their success when he was helping build the team over there. And we kind of see that with the way we draft. We pick up great talent regardless of the round and regardless of positional value, right? The Rams do that all the time. They're getting like 4th, 5th rounders. They're doing great. I mean, look at Puka Nacua, right? On the other side, I think Geno Smith didn't have a great day. He did throw 3 touchdowns, but threw 3 picks. I think overall, Mike McDonald wants to have a very pass-heavy offense, but I'm not sure Geno Smith is the right quarterback for this pass-heavy offense. He has an offensive coordinator who was in college last year, and they want to kind of get the ball throwing. But Kenneth Walker is 25 carries for 83 yards. That's just that's not efficient to say the least. But they seem to have hit with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I started in fantasy this week, and
shameless plug there.
Right? But they have talent, but I think they have to balance themselves out a bit more here.
Yeah, and hey there, Phil. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you tuning in there, and good evening to you as well. Yeah. And then, of course, Jeffrey, we already talked about this game quite a bit, but the Lions, again, asserting dominance over the NFC North, having that will to go in there to Lambeau and get another victory, 24-14, firmly planting themselves as the masters of their own destiny. And I was a little bit surprised. I know we talked about it a little bit, but especially after that interception to end the first half, the fact that the Packers did trot Jordan Love back out there, especially with how they were trying to even drive down the field, and they completed that pass right before the end of the half. The Packers did, and he just wasn't able to get down there to spike it at all. Like he couldn't move. Yeah. The fact they put him back out there in the second half was a little bit surprising to me. So, they do get a bye week before their next game, so he gets time for that groin injury to heal up.
He needs that.
But yeah, if he doesn't, if he can't get back up to, back feeling better there, it seems like it's going to be a problem for the Packers moving forward.
Yeah, at least encouraging for them. Malik Willis looked good in relief for Jordan Love. And I too was surprised. Like if he's unable to walk, you might as well kind of, I understand, it's probably a thing they were playing us and, he wants to be in there and, you know what I mean? It's that whole thing plays into it. But I really wonder how it would have been if we got Malik out there. I don't think it would have changed the outcome, but they might have been able to score a little bit more.
Yeah, add that to the book of what ifs right there.
Yeah.
All right, Jeffrey. Then Sunday Night Football, we had the Minnesota Vikings, the last of the NFC North teams in action against the Colts. Joe Flacco, of course, getting the start here for the Colts in the place of AR-15, and the Colts didn't look great. Joe Flacco did have an interception in this game, no touchdowns. Sam Darnold also had 2 interceptions, but he brought 3 touchdowns to the table as well. And Justin Jefferson also had 7 receptions for 137 yards. So, seeing this Vikings team continue to roll along here, and they are with the victory over the Packers, they are now in second place in the NFC North.
Yeah, I think they are our biggest threat at this point, especially if Jordan Love doesn't become healthy and the groin issue kind of lingers here. Mm-hmm. But on the other side, I mean, you got Joe Flacco throwing up Anthony Richardson numbers. Very inefficient, not a great day for him. I expect him to bounce back. I don't think he's going to be as volatile as Anthony Richardson would be, but it does add, it does raise the questions, if you're going to have a performance like that, maybe you should have Anthony Richardson in. But, then again, people have the jobs, right? They're playing for the team. They want to win. They feel like Joe Flacco kind of gave them the best chance, but it didn't work out Sunday night.
Yeah, of course, the Vikings are a tough opponent. So, we'll see if they feel it's time to try a different approach, or if they run it back out there again. But Vikings certainly shout out. I mean, between Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, and Dan Campbell, 3 of the best coaches in the NFL right there in the NFC North. So
speaking of Matt LaFleur, did you catch I think it was Troy Aikman last night. Oh no, it wasn't Troy Aikman. Someone on the broadcast mentioned that Matt LaFleur spends about $100 a week to make sure that his beard and hair to kind of keep it that the way that it is. I mean, he's a good looking man.
Was it Kevin Burkhardt? It had to be either Kevin Burkhardt or Tom Brady, or I guess maybe Aaron Andrews. But that's the broadcast team there. But
I just thought, I mean, he's got a very tight, kind of goatee, kind of beard going on. Set a watch to that thing. Now we know why, man. Put some effort into that look.
Hey, look good, team plays good, I guess is what he's going for there. All right, Jeffrey. And then to finish off the week, I know we already talked about this overtime thriller here, but Kansas City, man, still undefeated.
I really thought it was going to, despite Baker not having Chris Godwin, Mike Evans not completing a pass to a wide receiver for a really long time in that game. I was expecting, based on how close it was, especially at the end, right? I was kind of expecting the Chiefs to get picked off, but they keep rolling despite even Patrick Mahomes getting rolled up on his ankle. Something went wrong with his ankle. He was helped back off field and to the medical tent. That he came kind of jogging back. But I have to clown Todd Bowles, man. You had the opportunity right there. And, right, like you either go for the overtime or you go for the win. I think at that point you have the Chiefs right there. You're not going to get any closer to that. You have to worry about the coin toss where your offense could never see the field. I feel like you gotta have the onions there to go for it on 2 and try to get this win for your guys there. But he did try to explain himself after the end of the game, and he was talking about like how the weather was bad and all that. And I'm like, man, that's just weak. Just go for it. I don't know. I could be biased though. I could be
too used to going for kneecaps.
Right. I could just be hungry for kneecaps with Dan Campbell football, but I don't know. I would have went for it, man. I would have went for it.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. Certainly an easy thing to second guess. I think the safe play is definitely trying to go to overtime and hope that your defense can hold out. But at the same time, you have the momentum and, might as well try and ride it. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't, unfortunately.
Yeah,
especially if
you got armchair coaches like me. You got one at a video camera telling you.
Yeah, when you know the outcome, looking back, it is certainly that hindsight can make a big difference. But it's a good point. It's a good point. All right, Jeffrey. Moving into our hot butts segment, our two S tier members who have already been fired because their butts are so hot, Jeffrey.
Oh.
Robert Saleh and Dennis Allen, now the two head coaches relieved of duties for their respective teams, the Jets and the Saints. And then some candidates who may be joining them sooner rather than later, Jeffrey. We move on here. Mike McCarthy. Let's look at this group here. We have Mike McCarthy, Brian Dable, Antonio Pierce, Matt Eberflus, Nick Sirianni. Although the Eagles are 6-2, but again, it's just something about them, that whole situation.
It's that punchable face, man. Look at him.
Just something there. Doug Peterson and then Kevin Stefanski with the Browns. Of these coaches right here, Jeffrey, who do you think is the next coach to be let go?
Coach. Ooh,
I think it's got to be Mike McCarthy, right? Especially if the Cowboys
Jones
continue to struggle.
In-season firing. Has he done that before? I actually don't know the history about in-season firing for the Cowboys. But I could see him riding it out with Mike McCarthy for the year, thinking that the Cowboys will make the playoffs while they have like 9 losses or something because he's got dementia now. But he's definitely hot. But as far as like the next in-season, I feel like there's going to be another in-season firing. I mean, the floodgates are open now, I think. I think the Bear – I think you know what? If I were to put money on it, I'd be Eberflus. I think they have another couple bad games. They continue to show that they're kind of poorly coached. We had DJ Moore run off the field in the middle of play while Caleb Williams was scrambling for his life, looking for an open dude. I think he might be the next to go and continue that train wreck down there. Doug Peterson, they did play the Eagles this week and lost to them. But if I were to put my money on it, it would be Eberflus.
I think there's certainly
hot, man. There's a lot of good choices here for who's the next dude to get sacked.
Yeah, there are a lot of unhappy faces. I definitely think we'll be seeing some new faces and new places here come the end of the season.
I will say the safest, I think, is Kevin Stefanski. If I were to say of all of these,
over Nick Sirianni, they are 6-2, Jeffrey.
They at the end of last year, they had the most ridiculous implosion I've ever seen. Like an 11-win team just absolutely just like giving up in their playoff game. And there was a lot of things bubbled out as far as like Nick Sirianni rubbing people the wrong way. Clearly he likes to get into it with fans and all that. I'm not sure why he was even kept around this season. But I feel like if they kept around this season, they're going to keep riding with him here. But you're right, man. That face, man.
Something about it.
Yeah, just something about it.
Has a bad vibe. Bad vibe. And then, Jeffrey, in terms of the Kings of the North, the Lions firmly in first place. Then we have the Vikings, the Packers, and the Bears, our bottom dwellers. So Lions now 7-1. Now 2-0 in division play. Feeling good, Jeffrey. Feeling good, in control of our own destiny. And, obviously I don't want to count our chickens before they hatch or get too excited. There's still 9 weeks left. But at this point, Jeffrey, I think it's safe to say that we at least control our own destiny when it comes to winning our first ever back-to-back NFC North titles.
Yeah,
not only NFC North, that goes back to the NFC Central as well. We've never had back-to-back division titles, and it looks like this season we at least control our ability to do that. Yeah,
and we're tied with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for that Central title because they got one before they got moved over to that other division. And I think this is shaking out kind of based on what we're seeing here in these past few weeks. I think our biggest threat, like we mentioned, is the Vikings, because we've seen everybody except the Bears, but the Bears, the way they look just on paper and just what I see out in the field doesn't concern me very, very much. But you never know, right? Because all teams are going to go through a bad game, right? Although I will be probably picking us in all of our pick'ems, I don't think we're going to win every single game. knock on
Mhm.
wood. If that happens, great. Please prove me wrong. But there's going to be some bad games. We could get into a trap game. We could get into a surprise, kind of like we just didn't play our best kind of thing. But you're right. If we keep stacking these wins, we control our destiny here.
And it's a great position to be and not have to be like, well, we're in the scenario where these guys have to lose to them, and they have like, no, just keep doing what you're doing, keep
Yeah.
winning, and we'll see you in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling to have, a new feeling, a great feeling. And then speaking of new faces and new places, Jeffrey, here is the official tally from Adam Schefter about all of the players who have been moved in the 2024 season via trade. So this does include some players like Amari Cooper, who was moved earlier, and DeAndre Hopkins, not just the players that were moved today, but certainly a lot of people on the move. And I think the Lions getting in here, adding Zadarius Smith, being one of the teams on this list that did make a move to improve themselves. Love to see it, because traditionally, if the Lions have been in these sort of trade talks, usually we're helping some other team improve by sending them a piece. So
like the Titans helping out the Chiefs.
yeah, so it feels good being the team this time that actually went out and made a move and got better as a result. So
yeah, and the pickup made sense for us, right? We absolutely needed depth, one, and a floor raiser, and we got that with Zadarius Smith. And there's nothing that can make up for Aiden Hutchinson's defensive production, right? But we, as a contender, we made the right move here.
Yeah, we have to moneyball it, right? We have to make up for it in the aggregate. We're not going to be able to just replace Aiden Hutchinson outright. So
I would almost, if this were Madden now, let's just say, if this were Madden, I would almost be comfortable giving a second or first round pick to get Max Crosby in the building as well. But we didn't go as crazy.
I'm sure they had some conversations, so it makes you wonder what the Raiders were looking for there in terms of compensation for Max Crosby. And I definitely like the Zadarius Smith pick. I like adding him in there. I could have, I wouldn't have been against if they had brought in maybe one more guy, whether it be a Chase Young, a Jadeveon Clowney, somebody out there to potentially just, again, to add to the mix there. And really give us two good solid edges. Would have been wouldn't have hurt my feelings at all. But at the same time, I certainly at this point trust in Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell to make the decision. So if I'm sure they were having other conversations, and if those prices were too rich for their blood, then I'm letting it roll. They're playing with house money until I see otherwise. They know what's good for this team. So I got no complaints.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good feeling. Good feelings all around for us.
Yeah, it's nice to not have to wear a paper bag on your head because of the current administration that is in place for your NFL franchise. It's a nice change of pace, right?
Yeah, that's what we have the Detroit Pistons now for, to balance it out.
We can just, if we ever want to feel that way again, we just go to a Pistons game. We're like, oh yeah, this is what that's like. Oh yeah, okay. All right, Jeffrey. Well, it is time to end the episode with our champs and chumps of the week. Let's start with your champ, Jeffrey.
Oh, my champ this week. It's got to be. Oh shoot. My champ this week. Excuse me. My champ this week. It's got to be Dan Campbell. I'm giving it to him. Like, he came in, got these guys prepared clearly. Right. He's a coach who, and this is not a bad thing. He's a petty man, right? He remembers. He is like, this whole team's got that mentality. Green Bay has danced on us for several years, and I think it was hilarious. Some of the Packers fans being like, they didn't like that the way that we're quote unquote running up the score. It's like, all right, guys, you have owned this division for years. I mean, let the team who hasn't won in like 70 plus years, have their flowers for a second. But I got to give it to Dan Campbell. Like, he clearly got them ready for this game. Right. We are firmly out of the SOL era, the same old Lions era. And we do something that many Lions teams have not done. And that's going into Green Bay and taking it from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my pick is going to be Kirby Joseph. We had Brian Branch had been ejected from the game. There was kind of like like a shifting in the momentum. We did go down there and kick the field goal. Jake Bates hit the 27-yarder, and then boom, just as we were heading, getting ready to head into halftime, that pick six really changed the tone of this game, really shifted it so that the game was firmly back, momentum heading the way of the Lions. And it was kind of a soul crushing. Phil mentioned the Lions take team souls earlier.
Yes.
That was the soul crushing play almost in the first half for the Lions. So Kirby Joseph, I know we've talked about him being one of the top safeties, and him and Brian Branch being one of the top safety duos in the NFL, and just continuing to step up and show that he's got the goods and getting in there. I know he now is tied with the league lead for interceptions, and that was his first one that he returned for pick six on the season. So exciting stuff that we're seeing out of Kirby Joseph.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Jeffrey, who are you going with for your chump?
Chump, I'm going with Jerry Jones. That might be an easy pick, but I feel like it might be also recency bias because I saw that Mingo trade and I was like, oh boy. But yeah, he, the time of the Cowboys that you knew Jerry is gone, man. You gotta get a football person in there to try to get this team back to where you think it is currently. I mean, the offseason moves just smell of ego. He went on the radio today, said that he wasn't going to pay Derrick Henry the money, and we see Derrick Henry absolutely destroying it out in Baltimore. Guarantee Derrick Henry would absolutely help this team out right now because their running game sucks as it is. But you got to move on. He won't, right? Because he's Jerry. He is the Cowboys at this point. So. But yeah, Chump.
You expect him to admit that he was wrong, Jeffrey?
No, I don't. That's why he's my Chump of the week.
Couldn't happen. Couldn't possibly be what's going to. No, you can't. You can never admit you're wrong. Can't admit that weakness. That just opens up all sorts of bad things there. My pick for Chump of the week is gonna have to be the offensive, I believe he's an offensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers, Jenkins. He had the quote after the game where I feel like the team that was executed today won. The best team didn't win, honestly. Yeah, I just got to be better. We got to be better as a whole. So, the Lions beat them. He refused to acknowledge them as the better team, and they just executed, right?
Ooh.
Like, isn't that what the better team does? They execute the game plan? Like,
sounds like he's up on that copium, man. He's high up on that copium. He just got his ass kicked in the rain out there. No, we were the better team, I swear.
We don't lose to the Lions. We're not worse than the Lions. Well, easy there, because you are.
Yeah, it's not like you lost to the Panthers, man. Then you got to be apologizing to your city.
There are other cat-based teams in the NFL that it is a problem to lose to, but yeah. I guess usually he's a tackle. It's Elgington Jenkins. But he played center in that game because Josh Myers was injured. And I've never done it at the NFL level, but I've been a tackle that's been had to go and play center, and it's a completely different world. So I understand, and having to do that in the rain sounds shitty. Don't want any part of that. So I can commiserate with him. Probably not a fun time for him to be had, but at the same time, unfortunately, the better team did win, and they left Lambeau with a victory. So, I mean, FTP, man, just FTP. All right, Jeffrey. Well, we're heading here into week 10 of the NFL action now. Now that we've celebrated this week 9 victory over the Packers. Of course, we are taking on the Texans in Sunday Night Football, Jeffrey. So, a nice primetime matchup there between, we've talked about the Texans not riding quite as high as they were last season. A little bit of a sophomore slump there for everybody involved, but still should be a pretty good, pretty entertaining game for Sunday Night Football. And always great to see the Lions take a center stage when it comes to national media.
Yeah, I think the Texans, they're going through a rough spot, right? They lost Diggs, big acquisition in the offseason, supposed to take their game up to the next level. And overall, you're right. They had been having the sophomore slump, just kind of sloppy play, not getting it done in general. CJ Stroud has come back to earth a little bit, but it's not going to be a good time for him though, because our defense is spicy, our offense is spicy, so it's going to be it's going to be difficult for them to manage. Man, they're coming in and they're playing the best team.
Yep, it's thankfully for them, they're not coming into Ford Field, so it's not going to be a completely hostile environment. But
Yeah.
at the same time, Lions fans do travel, so
we travel well.
Yep. And we also support shows like this very well. So I want to thank everybody who tuned in today. I know we had a lot of great participation in chat, a lot of new time faces. So again, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, we definitely appreciate you taking the time to join us here on this Tuesday evening. And our general times are Tuesdays at 6:30, and then also Sundays at 11 a.m. And we are up to 61 subscribers now on YouTube. So if you do enjoy the channel and want to help the channel grow, we are trying to hit that 100 subscriber mark before the end of the season. So up to 61, getting a lot of good momentum. But if you do want to help the channel grow, giving us a subscribe on YouTube would be a big help. So certainly appreciate all the support and all the interaction that we get. And then there are some other options available for you. We do some reels and shorts and all that on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and then we also are available on Spotify in podcast format. So you can check out not only this episode, but all of our other previous episodes as well are uploaded there. So however you enjoy to interact with the Lions Grid, we appreciate it, and we have plenty of options open for you. All right, everyone.
Y'all.
Means a lot. All right, Jeffrey. Well, that'll do it for us tonight. And as always, only one way to end the show, and that's with a Go Lions.
Go Lions, FTP.
All right, everyone. Thank you, and we'll let you get back to watching the election coverage or whatever else you're going to turn to on this Tuesday evening. We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.